Hello, everyone. I am Melissa Forziat. I'm a keynote speaker and the host of this Daisy Jones and the Six Rewatch podcast. When I speak, my topic is something I call Take the Doughnut. It's another way to say Carpe Diem, and it's all about going after the things that you want in life. Now, something that I wanted to do this year was rewatch the show Daisy Jones and the Six and talk about it with other people. And it's getting really fun. I've been really enjoying all the comments that have been coming in so far. I always encourage people to share their comments through the YouTube comments because when you reply to me on other social media platforms, nobody else can see it. But this potentially could be a conversation with everybody who's watching, which is the really fun part. So it's just a quick note about that. But I am so excited today to talk about episode 5 of this show. By the time I get to the end of this podcast, we're going to be halfway through the series. I've got more things planned for you after that, don't you worry. But we've gotten through a pretty good chunk of episodes here, and now we're going to talk about episode 5, which is called Fire. It originally aired March 10th, 2023. Again, these dropped in batches. So it's not the only one that dropped on March 10th. It was written for television by Scott Neustadter and directed by James Ponsoldt. He's directed all of them so far. And the description, so this is the summary that sort of gives the overview of everything that happens, and then we'll get into the details. So the description is, Daisy officially becomes a member of the Six, and the band goes into the studio to record their next album. Teddy instructs Billy and Daisy to write together. They initially clash, but bond when it is revealed that they both had difficult childhoods. Daisy reveals her parents did not tell her that they moved away, which is why she was arrested for breaking into her childhood home. Billy confesses his father was a deadbeat who abandoned the family. They also realize that they make each other better songwriters, but Billy is worried about Daisy's drug usage. As Graham pursues another woman, Karen grows jealous, leading to her and Graham becoming a couple in secret. Billy and Daisy write the song Let Me Down Easy, which impresses everyone. The other band members appreciate that Daisy has pushed Billy into letting everyone contribute something to the recordings. So that's the big picture of what we're going to talk about today. But let's get into the scene by scene breakdown. Actually, before we do, I guess a general note on this episode is that we've really focused our attention on adversarial Billy and Daisy up until this point, like the tension and the conflict between them. And this episode is one where we have to burst that open and find a new dimension to their relationship. There has to be something productive here for this thing to work and for them to become like this great band, right? So we're not there yet, but this episode is the turning point that gives us another side to the Billy and Daisy dynamic. And so I like that we really focus in on that here. And actually, because of that, we don't get a lot of time with all of the characters in this episode. I would say we get the most time with Billy and Daisy writing and the Karen and Graham storyline. And so sorry to Warren and Eddie, we're not going to get a lot of you. We're not going to get a lot of we certainly aren't getting Simone. We aren't getting much of Teddy. We're focusing on a couple different pairings here, and we're making the absolute most of it to try to make a transition in those relationships. So let's get to the scene by scene breakdown of it all. We, of course, are going to start with opening credits, and then we are going to open the first scene with Billy and Camilla asleep in bed. And I like that this episode bookends. It starts with Billy and Camilla in bed, and it ends with Billy and Camilla in bed. And a totally different set of things has happened in the middle, right? But those are the times that they've seen each other. And when they are in bed, it's a very different situation on either side of that bookend, where the morning light is on them. As we get started here, an alarm clock rings. Billy's going to shut it off. Tiredly, he's going to get up shirtless. Okay, Sam Claflin shirtless. Sorry, had to do it. Love is the Drug by Roxy Music is going to play. And the camera's now going to show us the scene at Daisy's. And it's a little more sort of like artistically sweeping through the room. When we opened on Billy and Camilla, they were just, there they were just in bed. And there's not really much motion happening. And there's not much motion happening at Daisy's either, but the camera wants to show us a lot more. It wants to show us the scene from the night before. It sweeps across sort of the ledge over her bed. It sweeps through like a bunch of bottles of alcohol. There's more than one glass over the bed, and it's like they're mostly drunk, but there's still a little bit of alcohol left over in them. It's messy. There's stuff all over the place, and we're just looking at this ledge, right? And I think there's a little bit of it's not a trick that they're playing on us, but because we don't see that there's a guy in the bed till the very end of the scene, and Daisy doesn't even seem to be processing that he's in this bed. When you look at this room this way, it's like, wow, she's such a mess. She's drinking more than one glass of alcohol and leaving a little bit left over. It's, she looks like she had a night. But then this camera is showing us a bunch of the room, and then it's going to show us Daisy. She's asleep. She's just got like hair over her face. You can't even really see her face. The phone rings. I love the choice here. I assume this is Riley Keough's choice. Maybe it was scripted. I don't know, but she's facing the camera, facing away from the phone where she's lying in her bed. And all she does, it's like, how can I pick up this phone and move almost no parts of my body? What is the smallest number of parts of my body that I can move to answer this phone? So she takes one of those long Riley Keough arms. She reaches around behind her with that shoulder flexibility that she's got. She grabs the phone. She puts it up to her ear. She doesn't even move the hair out of her face. It's just phone over hair. And and then the person she lives in a hotel, so somebody is giving her a wake-up call. And there's a good morning, Ms. Jones. This is the wake-up call you requested. Daisy speaks no words. She just brings her arm back around and hangs up the phone, knowing exactly where it is. And so now she's up, sort of. She's kind of bleary-eyed. She sits up in bed, not really sits, sort of like leans up in bed, reaches onto the ledge above her, grabs one of the glasses, finishes what's left in the glass. And then the camera sort of shows us what else is happening on the bed, because there's so much space. She's taken up so much space on this bed with nobody else in the frame. The camera pulls back to reveal the other side of the bed, and there's a guy there. And the thing is, like, the way they set this up, it's a surprise to find him there. Like, we're like, wait, it seemed like she was alone there for a second, even though there were two glasses. And the thing is, like, she's even a little caught off guard by the fact that this guy is there. Like, I can't tell what this look on her face is supposed to be. Is she disturbed? Is she like, how did I not remember this guy is here? Who is this? Like, it's not like she's not happy to see him this morning. Maybe she thought he would have left already. I don't know. Anyway, he's like, what time is it? We're hearing this song, Love is the Drug. It ain't no big thing to wait for the bell to ring. I mean, we've got some bells. We've got a phone ringing. We've got alarm clocks. Daisy's, again, a little disturbed by this guy being here. She's like, time for you to go, babe. She gets up. And you know what? I said it about Sam Claflin. I'll say it about Riley Keough, to be fair. She's in her underwear too. She's got like I guess she sleeps in like a camisole. Like, is it still is it still a camisole if it's really short? Is it cropped, or is it just because she's got a long torso? I can't tell. I don't know about fashion. Okay. So people sleeping in their underwear. So she gets up. We're now going to see the contrast. One of the things I really like about sort of putting these scenes side by side is that Daisy's room is really dark. There's like not really sun coming in. I don't know. It just feels like a really dark scene. But at Billy's house, it's much brighter. The scenes are much brighter here. And I will say, because I just said that, by the end of the episode, the scene where Billy goes back and meets Camilla in bed, it's totally dark. So it's almost like Billy's sort of crossing over to Daisy's side a little bit here in terms of like, well, the scene got darker. The scene got about as dark as it could because he met Camilla back in bed at night. So brightly lit scene we go to here at Billy and Camilla's place. He comes into a kitchen. Camilla is playing with Julia. I guess maybe she just fed Julia, but that's done now because Julia's still in her high chair and she's playing with like a truck. And Billy comes in. Camilla's like, "Dada," because Julia looks to see her dad as soon as he comes in. Billy greets Julia. He kisses her on the top of the head. He kisses Camilla. She asks if he wants breakfast. She gives him something to drink that's gross. I don't know. Is it like some 70s version of a green smoothie? Like I don't know. What are we looking at there? It doesn't seem like it would be coffee, because he's kind of disgusted by it. Billy says, "No, I should just get showered and get going." She says, "What time do you think you'll be back?" And he sets up, here's the code of how this is going to work, wife. He says, "If it goes well, I don't know, in time for dinner." And she says, "And if it doesn't," he says, "Well, if it doesn't, then it's going to be a long night." All right. And he leaves. And so he set up the rules for Camilla here. He says, if I come back late, it went badly. If I come back earlier around dinner time, it was awesome. Um, and, that's both in terms of we got things done efficiently, mostly in terms of we got things done efficiently. So I guess really for this opening, let's reassess that when we get to the end of the episode because he does come home late. But does it mean the thing he said it would mean? Maybe not. So we are going to see Daisy. She's walking out of the Chateau Marmont. She's kind of going through that common area with the pool. She finds a gift basket and a bottle of champagne on a table, clearly somebody else's, and she just takes them. She breaks into houses. She takes stuff. I mean, you know, she's getting those royalty checks, but my goodness, she's not against taking some free stuff, or stuff that wasn't supposed to be free for her, but it is now. So we're going to see a taxi pull up to Sound City. Daisy's in it. Billy is sitting in his car, top down. He's smoking a cigarette, just bracing himself for the day. And Daisy gets out of the taxi. They both look at each other. He gets out of the car. She takes a pill, and she takes a swig of champagne. Billy sees that. He watches that and he smokes a cigarette. We hear the song "Love is the Drug, Got a Hook on Me. Oh, catch that buzz." Love is the drug I'm thinking of. Oh, can't you see? Love is the drug for me. The something I'm noticing about this show is it does seem like a lot of the lyrics resonate very closely with things that happen in the show. And I don't think that's true of all. I did a Halt and Catch Fire podcast where I had an opportunity to speak with the music supervisor. And if you've never seen that show before, I don't know if it's that helpful for you to watch the episode, but I was totally fascinated by the way that music supervisor's brain worked. And he was saying that for him, it's not always about finding a song that lyrically matches. It was about finding a song where like the tone of it felt right, and like the time period felt right, and it felt like it elicited the right emotion in the show. This show, I feel very different about how they chose their songs. I will say I've already been recording interviews to release with some cast and crew, and I did get a chance. I'm not going to say who I've spoken to in the whole thing, but I will drop this. I did actually speak with the music supervisor for this show. And it is interesting because they have like a whole world of music to pull from, and I keep finding a lot of parallel between what's being said in a song and what's being said in the scenes that we're watching them with. So we get Billy and Daisy, they look at each other. She's, consumed substances and he watches it with maybe some fascination. We're going to get the title card, Fire. Great place to put the title card. This is where the fire is. Billy shuts off his radio. We're going to get another title card that says November 9th, 1975, getting close to Thanksgiving. He gets out of the car, grabs his guitar. Daisy's got her gift basket. They greet each other. They walk in at the same time, but they're not together. I think like just because they're next to each other doesn't mean they're together here. And that's certainly how it feels at the start of the scene for me. So the rest of the band is already in the studio. Warren, they've been there long enough. Warren is even showing Eddie a camera that he got. Graham's strumming away, and Daisy's gonna put the basket down. She says, "I made breakfast." I mean, that feels like a very Daisy way to assess the situation. They all stop and look at her. She's wearing the short shorts. She's got the long Riley Keough legs. Interview Karen says, "We didn't really know what to expect. This is, I mean, look, Daisy has recorded on a song with them. I think all of the band had laid down their tracks already, right? And Daisy came in to lay down her vocals with Billy on Look at Us Now. So they didn't have this experience. Whatever this experience is going to be, they haven't had this yet. Even if they think they're about to record all songs Billy has already like written, they still haven't had that experience either. So this is a really interesting, probably a great feeling of newness for them because the Six has played together for a long time. They toured at McNasty's. They've done some other shows. They, had and then when they weren't doing those things, there was this stretch where Billy wasn't with them, but they were living together, and I'm sure they were jamming together every day. So Daisy's the new shiny object here, and who knows what this is going to add to their day to day. They've had these experiences with her that were really one off. And so whatever this is something that like breaks up whatever routine they might have fallen into, whatever monotony there may be. So Lawrence takes one look at Daisy. He's like, again with the legs, man. And he says it low, but he says it to Eddie. And he does say it loud enough that Daisy can hear it, it turns out. Eddie's like, I know. Warren's like, I mean, I'm a leg guy, And Karen hugs Daisy. She greets Daisy. That's nice. It's nice when people greet Daisy. They should do that more often. Warren says to Eddie, and those legs, they just got me distracted, is all I'm saying. He keeps going on about her legs. So Daisy comes straight up to him. She says, Warren, right? This is such a fun, this is so fun, Warren and Eddie here. Um, Warren and Eddie's eyes go wide. Eddie in particular, his eyes just pop out of his head. Warren's like, yeah. He's like, I'm Warren. Daisy says, it's not my job not to turn you on, right? Warren and Eddie's eyes just stay wide. Warren maybe makes some facial movement here, but I love that from like beginning to end of this, Eddie's just like, it's so good. It's not my job not to turn you on. You know that, right? Warren's like, I do now. Like, I made a point in a previous episode when Warren makes a chauvinistic joke about Karen doing the dishes and Karen clearly not liking it. Warren's made a million jokes like that with Karen, and Karen clearly never liked it and has always expressed that. And Warren keeps doing the jokes. I don't think Warren's ever going to do a joke like that with Daisy again. And it wasn't even a joke, actually. This was him having actual commentary on her body. And I don't think he'll do any of those things again based on this reaction. I don't know. I'm trying to remember if it ever happens again in this show. But she dresses him down and he's like, uh-huh. It's so, I think, effective in how she just did that. He's like, I do now. She's like, great. She goes, she sits down. Eddie's kind of laughing this off a little bit. I mean, Eddie wasn't a good influence, but he didn't necessarily say the offensive things. So Billy is going to call a team meeting now, and he's going to run this thing. He's got it already. He's probably been bracing himself and practicing for this. He's probably got bullet points of what he wants to say. He says, all right, everybody, just want to say a few things before we get started. First off, we have a new band member. Let's hear it for Daisy Jones. And it was like, yeah. Billy says, thank you for being here and for doing this with us. Okay, check, check. PR responsibilities, check. Daisy says, thank you for having me. Check. Very official, very formal. Billy's like, so it's been what, like 4 weeks? Daisy interrupts because she doesn't want to hear the exposition that Billy's about to share. She just interrupts. She's holding her journal. She says, I wrote a song. She kind of clears her throat. Billy stops and looks at her. Eddie's ears perk up a little bit. She's like, well, okay, actually, I've written about 20 songs I'd like to play for you guys. Karen and Graham quickly, they're like glancing over at Billy, like, is he gonna lose it? He's gonna lose it. When is he gonna lose it? Daisy realizes that she interrupts you. She's like, sorry, I wasn't trying to cut you off or anything. I'm excited about it. So I feel like whatever energy she brought to interrupt it, because she definitely interrupted him, surely on purpose. But I feel like it's the same energy that she brought to the Diamond Head Festival concert, where she was supposed to get on the stage later, but she was so antsy that she had to move. When Daisy has the ability to have impulse control, and we know that because she let Simone go without a fight. She didn't say any of the things she was probably feeling. She has that capacity. But I think when Daisy is feeling like anxious, she acts. She has a bias towards action. So she does it here. And yeah, she's disrupting things for sure. Whichever way this was headed, I don't know. She just wants to get to the part where she tells him she's written songs. So he's like, okay. Daisy clocks just how much shuffling of the feet and position, just how many awkward glances there that are happening right now with the band. And she's like, what? She doesn't really know how this band works. She kind of has had a glimpse of it. I think she can guess that this is how recording a new album would go for them. Um, but interview Billy shares with us the songs were all written and ready to go. Billy was just here to get it done. So Billy is in the studio now. We're going back to Billy in the studio, and he says, well, Daisy, the great news is that we actually have songs for a whole album. A dozen songs, however many songs he said, for a whole album. So she kind of inhales, like, oh, my input was not requested here. It was never going to be requested. He says, I mean, why don't we play you some? She lowers her journal as he's walking away from her. And he says, and then you can have a listen and see if you feel strongly about any of them, or if you want to add anything, like feel free to tweak it, like really make no changes, but feel free to don't change a thing. Feel free, don't speak up. Like it's very like come on. Um, okay, I get it. This is how it's always worked with Billy writing the songs. And he was probably preparing these songs for a long time, not knowing that Daisy would even be in the band. Who knows how long he's been working on these. Um, but Daisy's in the band now. And Daisy had a writing credit and actually helped write their big hit song. So, he's trying to continue the precedent that he had set previously with the six, and she's not gonna have it. Okay. Okay. So interview Daisy says, I mean, can you imagine? Billy says, I could not have been nicer. And from their perspectives, neither of those comments rang false. I think Billy actually is very buttoned up in the way he's trying to shut things down here and keep people in their place. He's doing it in a very like almost I'm the communications guy, spokesperson, PR sort of way. And Daisy is doing what Daisy would do, and she'd jump in and say, here's my contribution. Um, and honestly, if Daisy the only way that Daisy would be able to make a dent here is if she were behaving the way she's behaving. Because if Daisy came in and stayed quiet and laid back, she was never going to get any say on any of these songs. And she knew that because she's looking around at the band and that's what's happened for them. So, you know, is there, is it a fairly assertive no, that was way too weak. She's very assertive, um, bordering on aggression at times. I wouldn't go all the way there, But there is actually no other way for her to get onto an even playing field with Billy here. He's not making that space for her. And actually, nobody is making that space for her because literally the only person who said hello to her once she got in the studio was Karen. Graham didn't, Warren didn't. We don't even see Teddy come in until later. So it's definitely something where she has to make space for herself if she wants it, and she is a person who can do that. And are you a person who can do that? Am I a person who can do that? Your mileage may vary, right? But this is the only way Daisy can be effective with this. So uh, Studio Billy, Billy in the studio, Billy from the past says, we could play the new one for Daisy. He grabs his guitar. Daisy's looking impatient. She's like, Everybody's grabbing their instruments. He comes over to Daisy. He says, yeah, I think you're going to dig this one. Daisy's chewing some of the food from her gift basket. She's like, let me guess. It's about your wife and the rain. Graham gapes at Billy. He's just waiting for the fireworks. Interview Warren laughs. Interview Eddie laughs. He says, I think it was called this. He says, I think it was called She's the Storm, verifying that Daisy's guess was correct. The Daisy in 1970s chuckles a little bit. She knows she got it right. Billy smiles at her, like, gotcha, he was caught, but he's not really smiling. It's the I'm the spokesperson smile, but it's not a real smile. He says, is that funny? She says, no. He says, sorry, did you want to say something? Daisy says, no, she, I like the blocking choice here. She now stands up to stand at his level. She says, I mean, I'm not here to sing harmony on a bunch of love songs about your wife, right? Like, that can't be why I was brought in, correct? She's looking for the agreement there. Graham and Karen are agape. They're just like, they're looking back and forth between Daisy and Billy, like, what's going to happen here? Daisy says, I mean, if we're going to be in a band, and she's looking around at everyone, she says, then the album has to be just as much mine as it is yours, as it is Karen's and Graham's and Warren's and that guy's. She looks over at Eddie, and Eddie should be offended, but he's going to give this one a pass because you know what? She's saying things that I agree with. Let's get this one across the line. I'm not going to interfere with this process. But once again, Eddie being disregarded, like it's a slight, but the content of the message is okay. So we'll allow it. Interview Eddie says she was saying things I've been saying since 69. Daisy in the studio says, and if you look at Billy's face here, he's taking it like a punch to the gut. Like he's, the way like a boxer will say, like, I don't know, I guess you tense your stomach up or whatever, so that it doesn't have as much impact. He's like fixed in place to absorb the blows that Daisy is dealing to him. She says, I mean, shouldn't we at least talk about a direction? Graham is watching Billy with his eyes wide. She says, is there a concept, a big idea you have for the record? Or Karen jumps and she says, actually, I agree. And they both stop to look at Karen. She's like, what? I think it's a good conversation. Billy's eyes are now locked on Karen. Like, he's not saying it. He hasn't really moved any muscles in his face other than to like turn his head and look at her. But you can see he's like, you traitor. He was like making a note. Okay, Eddie's like, you know what I think? Billy's like, oh God. He doesn't want to know what Eddie thinks. No, no. Because now we've started a cascade effect. Now that Karen's piped in, everybody can pipe in. So Eddie's like, I think this should be a rock and roll record. Billy sighs, is like, thank you, Eddie. Thank you so much for your input. Eddie says, no, I'm serious. Daisy chuckles. Billy turns to him. He's like, of course it's going to be a rock and roll record. What the F? I can't tell if they've had this conversation a million times and he's done with it, or if he's never let Eddie speak because he knows he's going to say stupid stuff like this, or what he thinks of as stupid stuff like this. I don't know. Weigh in. What do you think on that one? Eddie says, I mean, is it though? Because a lot of these songs are sounding like, well, pop songs, man. Karen's getting a little uncomfortable. She's sort of like shuffling. Graham is full on gesturing to Eddie to cut it out. Like, don't say pop. Don't say pop. Eddie's like, like it sounds like Sonny and Cher stuff. Are we a pop band now? Or Billy turns away. You've gone too far with calling this a pop band. Says, all right, I mean, rock and roll should be passion, pain, and anger. Daisy gestures back to her. She basically gestures with her agreement. She's like, Eddie says, it's about sleeping with some girl you don't know. Warren is like listening to Eddie's big speech. You've been sleeping with some girl you don't know, not making sweet love to your wife, for Christ's sakes. Billy turns back to him, and Eddie gets a little sheepish. Eddie was getting really big for his britches just then. He was on a roll. He had some momentum, and now Billy just making like turning around and looking at Eddie, and Eddie's already like shrinking back into submission. He says, "No offense, Billy." Daisy says, "Sort of what I was trying to say." But perhaps more flowery language. Warren says, how about some African drums? Daisy gestures like, great idea. Karen says, we could do a song with just vocals and piano. Daisy's agreeing with all of it. Eddie's like, yeah, I'd like to write some of my own bass parts for once. Billy's hand goes to his brow. He's totally lost control. And it's not the only time in this episode where Billy's gonna like do one of these gestures. That's like the I'm just about to explode motion, the hand on the forehead situation. Daisy's agreeing with all of it. She likes all of these ideas. But Eddie jumping in and saying he wants to write his own bass parts. Once again, we don't want to hear from Eddie. No, no. So Billy puts down his guitar. He's like, I knew this was an effing terrible idea. And he's like starting to make like he's going to walk away. Daisy says, what's the bad idea? I mean, you invited me here. Billy's annoyed. He says, yeah, well, maybe that was a mistake, Daisy, all right? Her eyes go wide, and there's nowhere good for this to go. Teddy storms in. I didn't even know Teddy was in this building. We actually, with the way this scene is shot, most of what you're seeing in this conversation, we have these sort of like medium or close shots on the band or Daisy or Billy. There are moments when we're sort of panning, across from one character to another, or we're getting a slightly wider shot. And you can see in the engineering side of the studio that there is an engineer in the room, but I haven't seen Teddy yet. I don't see Teddy on that side. So Teddy was somewhere hearing this somehow. And he knew this is exactly the moment that superhero Teddy needs to jump in his cape and stop this in its tracks. He jumps in. He says, are you done? To Billy. Then he looks at Daisy. He says, are you done? Jesus Christ. You're acting like a bunch of kindergartners. Just maybe the two of you can go someplace and work on something together. How about that? Daisy looks over at Billy with some confidence, because Teddy saying this is sort of backing Daisy up. He's basically stopped the fight by saying, Daisy's right, you need to work on something together, not just use the whole album worth of songs you've already written. So he says, either way, the door's right there, so go on and get the F out of here because I got shit to do. And then you can see, like, Billy may be considering putting up a fight here. Maybe not, because it's Teddy. But then Teddy just stops. He says, go, goddamn it. And he shouts, go. And Billy looks a little like he's in a little bit of a huff about it, but he's going to obey Teddy. So he grabs his guitar and he says to Daisy very low, he says, come on. And Billy sighs as they're leaving. Daisy's smiling because she won this argument, let's face it. They leave. Teddy starts to leave. Eddie's like, what about us? Teddy's like, I could care less. What happened to Tweedledee Tweedledum, heartbeat of the track? So Teddy, very effective in a short time here. I do really like something about the way Sam Claflin walks out of this room. I can't put my finger on it, but it's like he's a little boy that got chastised and he's taking his toys and he's leaving. And he's like, "Ugh." He's got a little bit of the energy, but he is not going to fight back with Teddy. He has a respect and a deference for Teddy. And Sam Claflin somehow puts all of those things in a grown man's body. So good. There's such a nuance there to the way he plays that. It's like channeling little boy and grown man all at the same time. We're going to cut to outside Studio City because we don't care what Eddie is up to today and what the rest of them are up to. Well, we're going to care what Karen and Graham are up to. We're going to see Billy and Daisy walk to his car. He says, "Where should we go?" She says, "The Apple Pan." I just looked this up. Still exists. I feel like I should check this place out. And still has the same menu as what she ordered here. So, okay. Anyway, Billy's like, "What?" She says, "I'm hungry." He's like, "It's like 10 in the morning." They both put their guitars in the car. It doesn't even look like there would be space for two guitars and them in this car. But there is. So Daisy says, "Well, I can't work if I'm hungry." So Billy is going to drive them the tops down on the car. Daisy turns on the radio, and we're going to get the first Barry Manilow song we're hearing today. Could It Be Magic? I love this episode's relationship to Barry Manilow. I love it so much. I don't know why any Barry Manilow songs were cleared for this episode. Like, somebody who runs the Barry Manilow song collection had to say, "Sure, I agree with your use of these songs," where almost everybody insults Barry Manilow who knows anything about music in this show. Um, it's so I love this detail so much. We're gonna start with "Could It Be Magic?" So the radio goes on from Daisy. "Could this be the magic at last?" Billy shuts it off, doesn't want to hear the song, doesn't like the song, or just doesn't want Daisy's input on anything. And Daisy can't believe it. She turns it back on. "Oh, let me know." He shuts it off again. She smiles. She turns it back on. "Baby, I want you" is the lyrics. I mean, could this be the magic at last? Let me know. Baby, I want you. Okay. What are we setting up for these folks? He turns it off again. And then he says, "Turn it off." She says, "It's a good song." He looks at her through his sunglasses as if to say, "But it's really not." But what he says is, "It's my effing car." Maybe it doesn't matter what song she turned on. He just wants control over this domain. If he has control over any domain, it must be this one. Daisy's like, oh my Lord. So we are going to hear a bell ding, and then that brings us into the Apple Pan. A waiter comes over. Yes, what they'll have. Daisy says, again, so many good choices. I love the way it's like everything about how, I don't know, maybe I love the way the whole episode's written, frankly. Daisy says, "Two hickory burgers, medium rare." Billy's caught off guard that she's ordering for him. She says, "And two sides of fries, please." And Billy says to her, "I don't need you to order for me." I love the little emphatic nod at the end, like, "Got it?" She says, "Well, good, because I didn't." And she smiles at him. Billy's eyebrows scrunch a bit. He's going to look over to the waiter. He says, yeah, I'll have the same." I don't know how Daisy doesn't crack up at this. Like, "I don't need you to order for me." Yeah, I'll have what she's having. It's so good. I think it is also a reflection of how much these two characters will mirror each other in creative moments. And he's mirroring her in ordering. Maybe she knows the Apple Pan really well and he doesn't, or maybe he feels like he needs to throw down and eat as many burgers and fries as she does. I don't know. Um, but when left to, no, the menu is your oyster. Have anything you want. And he's like, same after making this whole stink about it. Anyway. Okay, so the waitress is coming right up. We're gonna hear some music playing faintly. He's getting a little awkward. He's kind of like bopping to the beat. He's sort of drumming a little bit. He says, all right, look, no good's gonna come out of us fighting all the time. Daisy says, how do you know that? He's confused. Like, this, you're fighting me on this too? And it doesn't even seem to compute for him. Like, what could she possibly mean by this? Daisy says, well, what do you know about fighting? Nobody ever stands up to you. And then she just cocks her head. Billy has no idea how to respond to this. It's like he can't argue with that because it's true. Daisy says, can I ask you a question? He he's the whole line is a sigh. He says, be my guest. Why are you so obsessed with your wife? She asks. He laughs. He's like, what? It's just left field questions coming all over the place. It's like, what could she mean by all of these things? No way is she asking this personal a question. She says, I met Camilla. She is great, but why can't you write about anything else? He laughs. He's like, it's like you can see him thinking, like, the nerve of this person. He doesn't want to talk about this with her. She says, are you afraid she's gonna like leave you, or do you feel like you're not good enough for her? What's the thing that he's chuckling, but he's trying to hide behind it. I like actually feel that he's trying to hide, but behind pretending this isn't a big deal and trying to deflect in that way. But Daisy's not letting him deflect. These are really, really personal questions. It's a lot. And Daisy's like, did you do something wrong? And Billy stops her. He says, like, Daisy, I don't want to talk about this, okay? Because there's like no way to keep deflecting. She's not accepting the deflections. She says, okay. He says, okay. The waiter comes over with 2 hickory burgers, each super fast. They had those things ready and waiting. Daisy's unwrapping her burger, and Billy starts humming and singing along to the radio. But what song is it, folks? You know it. Stumbled on Sublime by Daisy Jones, except it's by Wyatt Stone. So she raises her burger to her mouth and stops as Billy starts singing the lyrics to Stumbled on Sublime. Then she's like, okay, whatever. So she eats. They both take a bite. She takes a big bite. He's bopping his head. Daisy's mouth is full. She says, do you like the song? He says, Stumbled on Sublime. She says, mm-hmm. He says, I mean, everyone likes the song. She says, I wrote it. She just wanted to be 100% sure he actually likes it before she claims it. She says, I wrote it. She says, what do you mean you wrote it? She says, I mean, I wrote it. He says, like, you wrote Honeycomb? He's the only person on the planet who's not calling it Look at Us Now. She says, kind of. He says, okay. She says, well, I wrote the lyrics and some of the melody. Well, most of the melody. She looks at him. She leans in a little bit. She's like, listen to this song. You think Wyatt Stone could have written that? Billy's I love all these choices. Billy, he's listening. He looks at his burger. He looks at her. He's like processing what the lyrics are. She's all around your head. She's dancing on the edges of your mind. Those are the lyrics we're hearing right now. He says, it's an effing great song, Daisy. And he has to admit it. It's a good song. And he, not knowing that it was her song, he was bopping along to it like it was a good song. She says, well, cool, man. Now that you dig it, maybe you can stop being such a dick all the time. She smiles during that delivery. He laughs a little bit, takes a bite of his burger. This is something I've been talking about with our commenter split mid a little bit. There was this theory that, like, did she learn to smile during conflict from her mom? Because that feels like the kind of thing her mom would do. Not necessarily in private with Daisy, especially when she was younger, because we know her mom will lay into Daisy when she was younger, when they're alone. But if Daisy did something in front of a room full of people or a party full of people, I feel like Daisy's mom would have had this smile on her face and said a thing that would basically be dressing her daughter down. So I don't know. I do think maybe that's where Daisy's learned this. Um, and we're going to see as this episode goes along, Daisy and Billy's ability to like absorb the blows and like actually take the joke evolves. For now, let's go back to the house where the six lives. Graham's waxing his surfboard. Warren and Eddie are outside. Warren's like, hey man, you sure you don't want to come? Graham's like, I've already seen it. Warren says, yeah, you've seen it once. Graham says, that's probably the appropriate number of times to watch Rollerball. I still need to see this movie. I've heard a lot of people talk about this movie, but I haven't seen it yet. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Warren says, it's so Graham says it's probably the appropriate number of times to see it. Warren says, not if you appreciate art, brother. He stands. He's like, it's a true cinematic masterpiece. Graham says, all right, well, enjoy round two, gentlemen. Warren and Eddie agree to do that. They stand up. They're going to leave. Karen says, she enters the scene. She says, what are you guys up to? Eddie says, movies. Karen's like, oh, rollerball again? Graham laughs. Warren says, it's an effing masterpiece. They leave Graham. They all leave. Graham is still working on his board. Well, when I say they all leave, Eddie and Warren leave. Graham is there waxing his board still. Karen's still standing there. And this is awkward because, hey, last we saw of them, Karen's like, no, let's just be friends. Bye. And so it's weird. It's awkward. So Karen's trying to find a way to break through this to like get them back to like being okay with each other. Karen says, Graham. She comes over. He stops waxing. He stands. She says, are we good? He says, of course we are. He smiles. He says, we're great. In a way that suggests like, not exactly, like, it's actually not entirely normal. What it is, I don't know, but it's not normal. He says, we're great. All right. And he goes back to working. Like that doesn't then become a fun banter conversation. He just goes back to working. She leans back. She's like, okay. And actually, sorry, I missed a little bit there. She has said that she's going to come to the beach with him today. And he stops, he flinches. He's looking at her. She's like, I mean, why not? Got nothing else to do. She's being really blasé about it. Like, I mean, might as well. It's not super complimentary towards him. It's not like I want us to be good. And so I think we should spend some time together. She's like, I mean, I have nothing better to do. He considers it. He says, okay. He goes back to waxing. And that's the point when she comes over and she says, are we good? He says, we are. But then he goes back to working and she leans back. She says, okay, I'll go get my stuff then. He says, yeah. And when she leaves, he stops working. He looks back in her direction. She's gone. She can't see that. But it's not all water under the bridge here. He very much remembers the last conversation we saw them have. We're going to hear a car horn honk. And here's the thing. What's Graham doing exactly here? Because he probably should have said, this is actually a date with Caroline, or at the very least, just saying, by the way, I'm going with Caroline. Because my impression in this scene is that Karen didn't even know Caroline was going to be there. I guess there's more than one way you could read this, so I'd be curious what your interpretation is. But Graham comes out to Caroline's punch buggy, and he greets her. And he's putting the surfboard in the car. Karen starts to walk out of the house. She's ready to go, and she stops in her tracks. Now, I don't know if this is specifically because she saw Karen, and it turns out the plan was for Caroline and Graham to go together, or if it's because when Graham greets Caroline, he gives her a kiss. So I'm not sure, like, what was the thing that really put this over the edge for Karen. Did she know at all that Caroline was going to be there? Or did she know, but like seeing them in the car kissing is a different thing altogether. Graham calls to her. He says, "Are you coming?" She says, "Why don't you guys just go ahead?" Because she realizes she's going to be the third wheel here. And Graham's like, "Why? Are you all right?" And Karen says, "Yeah, I just didn't realize that this was." Caroline's like, "Oh, no, 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 no. It's totally fine. Hop in." And Graham says, "See?" Caroline chuckles. And I gotta say, I read this as Caroline is being genuine. And she's like, totally okay if you join us. Um, Graham's like, "Don't be weird." He gestures with his eyes for Karen to get into the car. He says, "Let's go." He says, "Okay, cool." She's gonna get in the car. So yeah, I think it's kind of an interesting, everything about what's happening with Karen here is kind of interesting. But I think like how does she know that Graham has been on a bunch of dates with Caroline? I would think so. Surely, yes. Did she know that Caroline was going to be going to this? Maybe, but I don't know. So I have some questions here. But anyway, just the very idea that she's like interrupting a date makes it weird. Would make it weird for anyone though. So we don't have enough information yet. Daisy and Billy are going to walk up to Teddy's house. Daisy knows it's Teddy's house. Billy does not. And I think this is just like another way to represent for us this little moment here. This is another way for us to get this representation of the difference between Daisy's relationship with Teddy and Billy's relationship with him. Because you might be able to say that he's sort of a parental figure for both of those characters, but just like Teddy doesn't necessarily know the ins and outs of Daisy's personal life, but she's seen his house and he knows her in a creative way that's very specific. And the, on the flip side, Teddy is deeply aware of Billy's interpersonal life. And I think there's a bit more mystery around Billy's creative process because Billy tends to bring like finished stuff to Teddy. So there is sort of like an interesting element there for me with that. So here they are at Teddy's house, and Billy doesn't even know that it's his house. Daisy puts down her guitar in front of this gorgeous house. He's like, "Wow, whose house is this?" She's never been here before. He says, "I can't say I have." Daisy's looking in the plants for a hide key. She's looking everywhere for a hide key. She's like, "Okay, where is it?" He's like, "Daisy." She's like, "Wait, the key." She's sifting through rocks. She crosses over the pathway. She looks on the other side. There's really nowhere to put a hide key on that side. He's like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "I'm looking for a key, Billy." Duh. Um, Billy's like, "Daisy." So finally she looks inside the light fixture, the porch light. She's like, "Aha!" And she grabs the key. And he says, "Why do I feel like why do I get the feeling we're breaking the law?" He bites his lip a little bit. She opens the door. She says, "It's not very rock and roll, Billy." He says, "Okay." I love that little interaction. "Why do I get the feeling we're breaking the law?" "That's not very rock and roll, Billy." "Okay." And then go in. So it's sort of like a cute little teasing moment between them. I would also feel uncomfortable like Billy does. It's funny as I'm like talking back through these first several episodes, I've justified Billy a lot, haven't I? More than maybe I thought I would. Maybe that's a reflection of my own need for control. I don't know, but I can understand the feeling. Like this is a man who wants control. This is a man who has really like I don't even want to say unfortunate. He goes really out of control when he's not in control. And so he needs to maintain control. And there are a lot of things that are happening right now that are a threat to his control. So he needs to maintain that order. Maybe he associates it with maintaining his health. So I guess I feel protective of it in that way. And I understand those slights. And there's absolutely no way for Daisy to be in this band unless she makes space for herself in this band. So and that's true of everywhere she goes. So she breaks into houses and she grabs people's fruit baskets and champagne and all these kinds of things. Anyway, okay. So they get inside this house. She puts down the case. Billy's amazed when he looks around this house. He sees the pool through this huge wall of windows. I mean, it's gorgeous. He sees the piano. He touches it, plays it a little bit. Daisy goes over and gets herself a drink at the bar. He sees that. He watches. He's like, great. Because there's this whole bar that he now has access to. just temptation right in front of him. He looks around another room. He sees old photos of Teddy. So now he knows where he is. His comfort, he's comfortable now. And frankly, I don't know how he would write effectively if he felt the discomfort of thinking he had broken into somebody's house that he didn't know. So at least he's sorted this piece out for himself. Uh, what are these? Does anybody know what these photos are meant to be of? Who is Teddy supposed to be in these photos with? I wasn't able to make that out myself. He grabs his guitar and he sits in the living room and he's starting to strum something. It's an early idea that will become Let Me Down Easy. And Daisy comes in, she sits in a chair next to him, and she's in this beautiful, again, I don't have words for clothing, but she's in this really beautiful, again, it's like she's got like a white camisole crop top, but then she's got this, I want to call it a cardigan, but it's sheer. It's beautiful. And she's got these really short shorts on. Or again, I don't know, maybe they're regular length shorts and she just has really long legs. Like I don't know. Um, so Daisy's hearing what he's strumming. She's like, "What is that?" He says, "Just something my brother was messing around with." And he stops. He says, "So how's this going to work?" She says, "What do you mean?" He says, "Like, what's your process?" She says, "My process?" He says, "Yeah, for writing songs." She has no idea. She has no idea. She says, "You're looking at it." He says, well, he's just sort of thinking, he's like, okay, like what have I gotten into here? Um, it's an interesting thing to say because Billy has written an entire album worth of songs. He's written 2 albums worth of songs, and he probably has a pretty specific process for it, even though we haven't really seen that. And I actually think, now that I'm saying this, that the show is giving us Teddy's vantage point, because when we see songs from the Dunn brothers or the Six, they are fully formed, completely finished songs that Billy wrote and they've been doing. When we've seen Daisy working on songs, she's almost always been in a brainstorming process. So like we actually have no idea how these like fully formed creations come to be from Billy. And for Daisy, we have seen her process, but we've seen her struggle with it. We've seen her in writer's block. We've seen her promise an album full of songs in a week to Teddy and not be able to deliver something she was happy with. We've seen her, in these highly edited montage segments of her trying to write, just like drinking and pacing and getting fired up. We've seen all that. And so her process hasn't seemed particularly consistent to me. She's got a journal full of ideas that she writes down whenever they come to her, and somehow they turn into songs. So it's an interesting conversation that they're having here. Daisy, I guess her process now is going to be trying to get to know Billy better, because I think she's not comfortable enough to write with him. So she says, your wife said you don't drink anymore. He chuckles a little bit, like he's bracing himself for having to fend off another round of questions from her. And she says, "Does this bother you?" And she's got a drink. And it's maybe one of the most like making space for Billy moments that she's had, where she's like, is this okay? She's like getting his consent on something. Well, she's already doing it. But if he had said no, I think she would have changed her behavior. I think would have hidden the drink or put it somewhere else and drank in another room or something. So she's just like getting a lay of the land with him in terms of the fact that he clearly abstains. And there she is drinking. He says, "It's fine." So he's setting up that I'm okay if you do this stuff in front of me. He starts strumming again. She says, "I don't know how to write with anybody." It's a flash of there's almost like a worried look that flashes across her face. Like she doesn't know if she can do this. As much as she's been direct and had all this bravado, we have spent an episode and maybe almost a half, maybe not quite there yet, holding up a mirror to Billy for him to see what's in that mirror. And it hasn't felt good to him. And now in this episode, we're going to have some moments where we turn that mirror on to Daisy a little bit. And I have to say, she has a much harder time coping with that than what I'm seeing from Billy. She can dish it out, but I don't know if she can really take it. So these little moments where she starts to sort of like bring the facade down and when she can say, look, I know we're meant to be on the same page, but I don't know how to write with somebody. And Billy then will drop his guard a little bit too. And he's like, me neither. Well, not really. She says, okay, so what do we do? And this is her saying, take the lead. Go ahead. Propose an idea here. He stops playing. It's a good question. So he pulls out his songbook from his pocket. He exhales. He's like, at least look at it, will you? Like, they're not all about my wife. So he starts strumming, and there's like this really fun pattern of sometimes he's strumming, sometimes he's waiting for her reaction. She doesn't like the first one she reads. He's like, well, pick another one. He strums again. She doesn't like the second one she reads. He grabs the book back. He's like, you know what? Give me that. It's fine. We'll start something new. So she grabs her book and she gives it to him. And he stops playing. He takes the book. He reads the first page. He doesn't love it. He's like, okay. She's like, but. And you can see her getting defensive here because I think maybe she thought that when she showed her lyrics to Billy, he was going to be wowed by them. And that's not the reaction she gets. He stands and he goes outside. She's like, no, what? And she follows him outside. She trails him. She says, what's the problem? He chuckles a little bit. He's reading. He's like, nothing. It's just, she says, what? He says, I don't dig all the nature shit. I like that he's giving her very specific feedback here because this could, if they didn't do this in the writing of this scene, it could feel like it's just tit for tat. Well, you didn't like my songs, I don't like yours either. But he actually, in this situation, like her feedback to him was not particularly helpful. It was just like, oh, look, like, come on, this song, maybe because she's already given him the feedback, maybe because they were all about his wife. I don't know. But he is able to say to her, I don't dig all the nature shit, the imagery. Like it might work for some people, but it doesn't work for me. He says, are these even lyrics? He's looking through the book. She says, yes, they're lyrics. They're ideas. They're fragments. They're just things off the top of my head. He says, kites fly in a firestorm. I don't know if I know what that is either. It sounds like the kite's going to get really messed up, doesn't it? Daisy says, it's a metaphor. He says, for what? She says, for feeling untethered or adrift. My guess of what I was just guessing before I read that was not the thing she just said. So, okay, there you go. Billy says, well, maybe just say that then. You know, it's okay sometimes to just say what you mean. Daisy says, I can say what I mean. Billy says, can you? She says, yeah, I think you're a shithead. How's that? He says, okay, that's better, actually. She smiles a little bit and sits next to him on another chair. So again, we're starting to see a little bit more like they can do this thing where they say these things to each other, and maybe they are a little bit more starting to take the joke than they were before. I do think that what Billy articulates here is important notes about like, here's what I don't like about what I'm reading here. And in a perfect world, Daisy would be able to say a little bit more than just, let's not write songs about your wife. And then hopefully they could find a way to get lyrics at least that not meet in the middle, but what's the sweet spot where they both feel good about what they've written. They do need to be able to say things like this to each other. So I'm glad that they're starting to have that conversation. I will say when Billy says like, it's okay sometimes to just say what you mean, I think Daisy's kind of always said what she meant to him, right? Like just these lyrics don't. It is an interesting thing that in conversation, Daisy is very direct with what she's thinking. But in these lyrics, she's very flowery with her language. And I think it probably is like confusing to Billy. Like, how could you be like this in conversation and like this in your lyrics? But he's not saying that. So I don't know if he's really feeling that. But she's usually direct. So what he says here isn't really true in terms of what I've experienced of their dynamic so far. Okay, so they're kind of moving to the next stage. She says, okay, play that riff again, play your brother's riff. And he looks at her, he shuts the book, and he starts playing, and she's tapping her foot, she's humming, she's sort of getting it in her body. He looks at her as as she's humming. He looks at her like, okay, there's somebody putting sound to this. Great. He closes his eyes. Sam Claflin kind of scrunches up his face as he's listening. She's thinking, and then she needs to move. So his eyes are closed. He's concentrating, and then we're disrupted. We're on his face. We're disrupted by the sound of a splash of water. Daisy's going to swim now. And beautiful choice here. We see Daisy underwater, an underwater shot of Daisy up on the surface swimming. She's taken off her pants. She's in her underwear, her camisole and her panties pretty much. And it's all white. I mean, these choices don't work in real life for lots of practical reasons, but here it is. This beautiful shot from underneath the water with the light streaming through. She's like a mermaid. My goodness. It's just like Ariel from like the original animated Little Mermaid. Anyway, so he is now his concentration is broken. The camera gets to the surface. She swims to the edge of the pool. He's standing. He's like, "Are we taking a break?" She says, "No, we're writing." And she swims away and she floats on her back. He looks at her and he scratches like under his ear, not his sideburns, but like right under his ear. And then he keeps looking at her and he forces himself. He had to like shake his head and force himself to look away. Couple thoughts about this. First of all, it tracks for me that her writing process involves movement or doing other things. I've noticed this for myself. A lot of times if I go for a walk, I'll get creative ideas. Or if I need to work something out or if I need to come up with something in my head, like going for a walk often helps. And it'll happen on the walk, not after. And there's something about maybe like the movement. We've seen her pace a lot in her room while she's trying to write. And so maybe she's trying to find ways to do other things to distract her brain, to distract her body. And so for her, I guess this is part of a writing process that we've seen her have. Billy's process probably is sitting down and thinking about it because that's what he's doing right now. And so he's like trying to absorb what this looks like for her. I am wondering, so this gesture, I am wondering, I need to look for this in future episodes. Is this a tell from Billy? Are we going to see him do this a lot when he's kind of like what is the tell here? Because he has to force himself to look away from Daisy in this water. And I think there's an attraction here that he's disrupting and it's awkward, right? So do we keep seeing this from him? Is this something we're going to see a lot more of? If you happen to know that, well, I don't know. Maybe that would be a spoiler heavy question to ask. If you have spoilers, put spoiler and then write your comment. But I will be on the lookout for this because I'm curious to see if we get more of that gesture from him. It seems like such a specific choice. Okay, let's go to the beach. We're going from water to water. So we're going to see a seagull. We're going to see Graham surfing. We're going to see Caroline and Karen. They're sitting on the beach on separate towels, not really looking at each other, and not talking. But now we're going to get some conversation. But Graham's been in the water for a little while. Caroline full on has like a magazine open in front of her. They've been ignoring each other sitting on this beach. Caroline says, I think it's really cool you're in a rock band, being a woman and all. You almost never see that. Karen's like, it's sad, but true. I mean, they really haven't been talking because if this is the first thing we hear, this feels like the first thing you would say. We're going to then, so now that they've like broken that ice and exchanged some words with each other, we are going to see a camera shot over Karen's shoulder to Caroline. So something about that makes it feel, okay, they're both in the same frame. It makes it feel like they're closer together. All right, the ice is broken. Karen says, what kind of music are you into? Caroline says, oh, a little bit of everything, I guess. That Barry Manilow is really something. The Barry Manilow that Billy couldn't stand to listen to earlier. Karen raises an eyebrow. She just takes it in. Karen is going to be such a little shit stirrer in this episode. Um, it's like Machiavellian. Maybe that's not even the right reference. She, it's like she was just waiting for a piece of information that she could use against Caroline, which makes you revisit the last episode's conversation that she had with Graham. But Karen raises an eyebrow. She clocks the Barry Manilow bit. She already knows Graham hates Barry Manilow. Got that one. So she's like, "You're really pretty." Caroline chuckles. She says, "I was Miss Teen Arizona in 73." Karen says, "Congratulations." Karen's like, "Thanks." She's a little sheepish about it. Karen says, "What is it you do now?" Caroline says, "I'm a student at UC Santa Barbara, pre-med." Karen says, "Oh, you're going to be a doctor." Caroline says, "Psychiatrist." So it would have been a different story for Karen, I guess, if Caroline was going to be a doctor, but it turns out she's just going to be a psychiatrist. Still, got to be smart for that job. But doesn't read the same way to Karen as doctor. Karen looks out onto the water and she says, "And you're into Graham." Caroline smiles. She says, "Yeah." Karen says, "Level with me. Is the whole rock star fantasy thing, guys with guitars and all that?" Karen says, "I don't think so." Karen says, "Well, what is it?" Caroline looks out at him. She says, "He's just a really good guy." Karen looks out. She's like now seeing Graham through Caroline's eyes. Well, I'll get back to that. She says, "Plus, Karen's like, what?" Caroline says, "I mean, he's sexy as hell." Karen's like, "Is he?" And she's like taking stock of Graham in a new way. Now, if this had been the very first time she had thought of Graham this way, maybe it wouldn't have been as effective, but Graham certainly planted a very big seed in the last episode where he was like, I mean, this is the thing, right? You and me, we should be a thing. He kisses her. It disrupts the denial that Karen was in, or it was either, right? And I put this out there in the last episode. It was either denial or she had no interest, or she had some feelings, but it was way too complicated and she was going to bury them under the surface. Um, Based on this episode, it wasn't that she had no feelings. So that leaves us with denial or kind of interested, but it's too complicated. And I would say both of those things get disrupted by Graham approaching her and kissing her and starting the conversation about it. So now she's probably been thinking about this a lot. It's clearly still going to be a little weird between them. Here she is crashing this date that he's supposed to be on, and it was totally fine for her to do that. He never told her that, like, we never saw the part where Graham said, "Wait, but Caroline's going to be there." So, they're all proceeding here, and now she's seeing Graham through Caroline's eyes. And Caroline's like, "You sexy as hell." Karen's like, "Is he?" Um, Graham, in his Baywatch run moment, comes running back to them panting. He says, "What are you two talking about?" Caroline's like, "Oh, nothing." They both say nothing. Graham says, "Who wants to learn how to surf?" He's looking between them like, "Who's my real match here?" Caroline says, "Are you crazy? There's no way I'm going in that dirty piss water." Yipes. Graham says, "Come on." Karen volunteers enthusiastically. "I'll go." He says, "Yeah?" She says, "Yeah." He says, "All right, don't drown on me, Circo. We need a keyboardist." She strips down to her bathing suit. Perfect opportunity. Caroline says, "You guys have fun." He says, "All right, we'll be back." We're going to get a pre-lap here of the Dixie Cups. I go. Love this song. This is a song I don't think about very much. Haven't heard in a long time except for this show. And it's so fun. Looking at the lyrics here, I'm going to totally fail in trying to interpret these lyrics to you. But the song, we're hearing "My grandma and your grandma were sitting by the fire." We're going to get a montage here of what it looks like when these two were trying to write. Billy is alone strumming his guitar. He can't really concentrate. He's thinking, he's doing his thinking face. Daisy is doing everything but what looks like writing. She's got a record spinning. It's this record, in fact. We're going to get a close up on Daisy's waist. as she dances, and I'm assuming this is Teddy's shirt. I'm assuming she's not only broken into his house, she's drinking his booze, she jumped in his pool, and now she's wearing his shirt, probably. And she's got her short shorts on. So this shirt it almost looks like she doesn't wear pants at all here. But I love this camera choice of starting on her waist. It's very sensual the way she's dancing to this. It's very almost a there's a Latin dance movement that she's doing here. I'm not really sure what movement I want to call it, but there is a circular hip thing that's happening here. Sometimes it's a little like that. Sometimes it looks a little bit more like a modern or interpretive dance. Billy's strumming again. Then we're going to go back to Daisy. She's getting more booze from Teddy's bar. She's going to go to Teddy's garage and she's going to look at the cars. We're going to see Billy still working on the song, singing a little bit. He stops. He's been hearing all this nonsense. He gets up and he goes to the room where Daisy is dancing to Aiko Aiko. And he smiles a little bit. This is Daisy's process. I think, he could be sitting here thinking, I'm doing all this work and you're not. But she said, like, he said, are we taking a break? She said, no, we're writing. And she was able to say, like, this is what my process looks like. And so far, I don't know if either of them have actually produced anything, but they both have a different way of thinking independently. I'll see them abandon that perhaps by the end of the episode, although I don't know if that'll be true for all the songs they write together. Okay, so this song, my grandma told your grandma, I'm gonna set your flag on fire, talking about hey now, Aiko Aiko on day. I don't have an interpretation of this song for you. If you have one for me, share it. I love you to do that. What is this song that I enjoy so much? What does it mean? Okay. So Daisy is, she's continuing to dance to this song. Billy's watching. She says, it's the first record I bought with my own money. Let me guess. Yours was something cool, like the Everly Brothers. She's still dancing a little. It's like, mm-mm. We stay on him. Daisy says, Fats Domino. Billy smiles. He's like, nope. He takes off his guitar. Fats Domino. My first association of that, I think, was from the game, like the computer game, Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, right? Fats Domino, I feel like, comes up in that. And then I went to go find out what Fats Domino was all about because of that game. Okay. Billy smiles. He's like, nope. He takes off the guitar. Daisy snaps. She's like, I love this. Little Richard. Such a good choice. I don't know how many choices Riley Keough gave the editors here. But this little snappy, like Little Richard, with like a slight turn of the head, so good. Billy says, no. She says, what was it? Billy smiles. He's kind of reluctant to answer this. He says, how much is that doggy in the window? But if you ever tell anybody, I'm going to deny it. She chuckles. She says, why don't you pick a record? So her music stops. He says, sure. He crouches down to pick one. She takes a drink. She says, what's it going to be? He says, well, the first song that she says, what? She says, well, my first love. Whoa. That's a big thing to share with a person. She says, well, that's exciting. We're going to get the needle crack on the record. We're going to hear the Beach Boys in my room. Daisy looks out this big window that they're standing in front of in that living room. Daisy approaches Billy. She wants to loosen him up to have him sort of meet her in her process, even though that probably won't be productive either. She is singing along to the song he's chosen. There's a world where I can go and tell my secrets to in my room. Maybe we've established now that Daisy will be that room or that like room proxy. Daisy's trying to pull him to dance with her, but he's not dancing with her. She's snapping. He's not doing this. We're looking at the back of her. She says, you know this song? Like you chose it, right? He says, I know this song. So she's singing in my room. He joins her in my room just for that one line. She says, in the world, she's singing, she's touching him a lot. She's like manhandling him or woman handling him. I don't know. She's like, move your shoulders. I'd be like, stop it. I'd be like, stop being so tactile. He really wants this to be done. You can tell. He's like, okay. She says, all you got to do is move one step. That there you go. And she's like, move your body. She's trying to physically get him to move. And he says, okay. And it means stop. When he says okay there, it's very final. It's very stop touching me. For whatever reason, it could be that he doesn't like people touching him. It could be he doesn't want Daisy touching him. It could be that he feels he's married and he doesn't want any other woman touching him, or it could be maybe he's a little attracted to Daisy based on what we saw earlier. And anyway, whichever answer it is, Daisy needs to stop touching him. So Daisy says, we don't have to be friends, but if we're going to write together, we can't be strangers. So ask me something, ask me anything. She's looking for ways to sort of bridge this gap between them and have less mystery. She goes over to the couch. He says, you'll tell me the truth. She says, sure, cross my heart. He comes over. He says, how many pills do you take in a day? She says, that's what you want to ask me? He says, answer the question. She doesn't know. He says, you said anything? She says, yes, and I'm telling you, I don't know. I don't count them. He says, you don't think that's a problem? She says, why would it be a problem? They're from an effing doctor. He says, well, it's a problem if you can't stop. She says, I can stop. I can throw these in the toilet right now and I won't feel a thing. He says, I don't believe you. We're going to cut to Daisy flushing her pills in front of him. She blinks a little bit like, see? He looks back at the toilet like, oh, she did it. Okay, snap. Of course, we know by the end of this episode, she still has some in her pocket, in her shorts pocket. So she always makes sure to have them in a few locations just in case something like this happens. This question, obviously, this is a very loaded question for Billy because he does have a substance use issue. He has an addiction. He has to be careful with this stuff. And I think he's recognizing this same problem in Daisy, but she doesn't acknowledge that it's a problem for her. I think that, look, okay, these pills are from a doctor. Are they prescribed for something? I don't know enough about any one specific condition to say she's got a condition and these have been prescribed to her. I feel like she's got somebody who's a doctor who's her dealer. I mean, like I don't know. Like I don't think that I don't know. I'll take people's interpretations on this. Like, is she being medicated for something and she's taking too many pills? Because frankly, if that were the case, she's taking too many pills. Like, she surely is a doctor who's prescribing these things for her for something legit would have to recognize that they're over medicating her. Like, I would think, right? So I take this that Daisy has had relatively easy access to pills, to any substances that she's wanted to have since she was a teen, first going to clubs. And I think that she has probably seen people in significantly worse off looking states than her. Maybe she's seen people OD, I don't know, but I'm sure she's seen people that look out of control to her, and she probably thinks that's what out of control looks like. And so her process here, like the balance that she creates for herself, maybe looks and feels balanced to her, and she might not recognize it as an addiction, but Billy sees it in a different way. And I think, again, now's the point in this part of this episode. This is where Billy starts holding a mirror up to Daisy, and her reaction to that is not great. Here, she's all out lying to him, and more than, like, she says, I flushed my pills. She's got some in her pocket. So it's interesting to see, like, both of these people are very resistant, but Billy has sort of taken it like a champ when she's held a mirror up to him. He's gotten frustrated. But he's stayed in the conversation usually. And we're going to see this evolve for Daisy. They go back to the living room. They both light cigarettes, I think we're looking at here. Daisy is going to put on another album. She's going to put on, there's a song, Too Late to Turn Back Now by the Cornelius Brothers and Sister Rose. She says, what else do you want to know? He says, why do you want to join the band in the first place? She says, you. I don't know if anybody would consider this an iconic image, but Daisy standing here leaning up against the record player, with, in front of Teddy's huge window, and she's got this big red shirt on. The way her hair is draping and this smoke coming out and sort of obscuring her face a little bit. What an image. Uh, just gorgeous. She says you. He's the reason. Um, the song here, the lyrics, so on point. In fact, I'm just gonna, well, maybe it's better if I try to read the lyrics in one shot. I don't know. That might be confusing for me. At this point, it says, "Son, please beware." Billy needs to know more about why he was the reason for her to be in the band. He says, "What about me?" She says, "I feel like I know you." Or like we've known each other for a long time. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. You feel familiar to me. He says, "Does that happen to you often?" She shakes her head and she says quietly, "No." She pauses and she says, "One more and then it's my turn." So this song so far, "Son, please beware," "Break your heart, break your heart," "Too late to turn back now," I believe I'm falling in love." All right, let's continue with their conversation. So he gets another question. He says, "Tell me how you really cut your hand." Good question. Because if you watch that interaction at the party at his house, boy, does it look like she just did a suicide attempt and her wrist was wrapped like in a very specific way in a specific place. Like, I, good question from Billy and a very delicate one. And she's been hammering him with incredibly personal, delicate questions. So he asks one of his own. He says, "Tell me how you really cut your hand." She laughs. She says, "I told you." He says, "Breaking into your parents' house?" She says, "Yes." He says, "You were serious about that?" She's smoking. She's, "Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm." There's a lot of emphasis there in that repetition. He says, "I don't understand." She says, "I had the number one song in the country and I just wanted them to know about it." He says, "But they weren't there." She chuckles. She says, "Nope, they moved away." He says, "What?" She nods and she gives him time to process that. And he's not looking at her, not out of, I think the only reason he's not looking at her to me here is that he's thinking about what she's saying and he's letting this sink in. And he says, "They moved away without telling you." She nods in agreement. He says, "Jesus, Daisy, that might be the saddest thing I've ever heard." I think him looking away and processing that is him thinking, first of all, that's deep. That's rough. And he's connecting this back to his father. Um, so Daisy comes over. She says, "Well, Billy, I hate to tell you this, but life's full of sad things." She's going to sit next to him on the bench. They're on the same seat now, finally. She says, "And when I feel sad, I take pills. What do you do?" It's time for her questions. She's certainly asked him a lot of questions before, but he hasn't necessarily answered them. So now they've created this dynamic where questions will get answered. She says, "What do you do?" He says, "I don't know. I mean, that's what I used to do, take pills. But I guess I just feel it." I don't know if that's even the word. I think he gets industrious. I think he squashes it by getting industrious and productive. That's the habit that he's created with Camilla. She says, "Oh, that's the saddest thing I've ever heard." He smiles at her. She smiles back, and he chuckles a little. What an interest, like this moment for me of like, they've just said these really personal things and he smiles and she smiles. It feels like they're cutting through the "I'm saying these things to hurt you or to get control" sort of a thing. This reaction feels like a genuine smile at each other, even though it's still really like dangerous territory for them. Possibly the most dangerous territory they've ever been on because they're getting so open with each other. She looks out the window. She says, "I see." He says, "What do you see?" She says, "You write songs about who you wish you were, not who you are." Billy blinks. Caught. Daisy says, "What if you didn't do that? What if you wrote songs about the guy that's not so good all the time? The guy that lets people down? The guy that maybe wants things that he shouldn't?" Billy says, "Who would want to hear a song about that?" She says, "I would." She says it looking straight at him with a certain softness to her. She says, "I think everybody would." The lyrics here of the song, I believe I'm falling in love." Billy thinks. Uh, let's talk about the lyrics there. I don't even need to. I don't need to say it. Like, I believe I'm falling in love. My goodness. Like, for me, especially on a deep dive, finding all of these gestures, these moments, this little thing from Sam, like Sam's choice earlier as Billy, this song, like all of this really makes me feel like the connection is really there. And I want to circle back to the episode, was it episode two, where Camilla finds Billy at the motel on their first tour, and Billy was cheating on her. She comes in and she lays down the law and she rips into him. She like pushes him up against the wall, and she's like, whatever happens on tour is happening on tour. And when this baby is born, this is going to stop. You're going to be a good guy, a good dad, a good father, a good husband. Not exactly those words, but she's basically saying, this side of you needs to be shut off, and you're going to be the good Billy when this baby is born. And it took him a minute. And he wasn't ready to handle that when the baby was born. And he was an absent father for those first, months while he was in rehab, the first weeks. And then when he comes back, he becomes good little Billy, the Billy who fixes up the house, the Billy who abstains from alcohol and, any hard drugs, the Billy who loves his wife and is dedicated to his kid. And that's the Billy he's had to be, because that's the Billy that Camilla said he needed to be. Directly in that conversation, she said, that is the Billy you have to be with me. And Daisy is saying to him here, you write songs about who you wish you were, the Billy who's good, not who you are. What if you didn't do that? What if you wrote songs about the guy who's not so good, the guy who lets people down, the guy who that wants things that maybe he shouldn't? He says, who would want to hear a song about that? She says, I would. Everybody would. Not everybody. There's one person specifically who has said he cannot be those things. We have set up this like polar opposite dynamic. So like, in order for Billy to be with Camilla, he has to be good little Billy. And Daisy is giving him license to be whatever he's feeling. And if that is in alignment with what he's showing Camilla, okay. But she suspects that it is not. And I think Billy is realizing that that's true. And Daisy sees through it. And so now Daisy has given him permission to be the real Billy. I think that's what I would interpret that to be. So this is a really stark contrast and really like compartmentalized situation. And if anything, I don't know, I think there's more compartment to what Camilla has presented to him. But I can't help but notice how like very different the acceptance factor is. It's almost like I don't know. Camilla's love feels very conditional on this is how you have to show up for me. And Daisy's saying, just show up as you are. And I'm not saying that she loves him, but there's something unconditional with Daisy. Or is the condition that he needs to be broken? I don't know. So I don't know, just a thing I wanted to set up there because I'm carrying this thread through from a previous episode. We're gonna get Karen on a surfboard. Graham's trying to coach her in the water. He's telling her relax. She doesn't know how to relax. She's English. She's flirting a little bit. He's like, okay, I got you. Karen now is going to plant a seed and then she's going to back away. She says, she's nice, meaning Caroline. Graham's like, yeah, she is. And she's pretty too. Graham chuckles. He's like, yeah, I'd say. She says, what do you guys talk about? Graham does not want to continue this conversation. He has his backup on this because Karen rejected him. He does not want to go here. He's like, Karen. She says, what? He says, are you calling her dumb? She says, no, no, no. He's like, she's like a fucking Rhodes Scholar or something. She says, I'm just asking if you have mutual interests. Oh, are you, Karen? There's this thing that happened. I've watched a fair amount of reality TV. And there's this thing that'll happen in like a game, like a Big Brother or Survivor, where a contestant, if they want to put a rift between people and they have enough time to let it happen, they'll just start by like planting little seeds. Like, don't you think this was weird? Don't you think she did this a little bit like that? Did you notice that look that he gave just then? And then they'll walk away from it. And if there's enough time, especially in a game like Big Brother, where you have more time, the idea will bloom in the person's head if somebody did it right. And it can be really effective. And they just need to walk away. Like they just need to plant the seed, not say something too incriminating, and then walk away. And Karen does that. And it's so effective. So Karen says, what do you guys talk about? And instantly Graham's like, are you calling her dumb? She says, no, I just mean, do you have mutual interests? He already jumped to, are you calling her dumb? He says, yeah, I mean, I think we do. Karen says, because I was talking to her earlier. She's a big Barry Manilow fan. If this got back to Caroline, and she'd be like, yeah, I did say that I liked Barry Manilow. Except Karen knows that Graham hates Barry Manilow. Graham's like, don't F with me. Karen shrugs. She's like, in that, like, it's true. That's all she needs to say about this. So she's planted a seed. Graham knows what seed she's planting, and unfortunately, it's going to work even if he's really annoyed that she's doing it. They both laugh a little bit, but it's kind of deeper than that. So Graham's like, "Well, we've only been on like 3 or 4 dates, and if I'm being honest, we don't do a lot of talking, if you know what I mean." And he's serving it back to Karen. He kind of can see what she's doing, and he's going to swat it back to her. And frankly, he should be really annoyed with her for doing this, because she rejected him. Don't be sneaky like this. He was very direct with her, and she's being sneaky. But anyway, she's still very effective. So he serves it back with her, like, we don't do a lot of talking, if you know what I mean. She's like, yeah, yeah, I think I do. He continues. He's like, yeah, not a lot of talking whatsoever, actually. She's like, yeah, I understand completely. He says, because of all the sex. It's so funny. Um, she definitely understood what he was getting at, and he's just like poking at her right now. Um, and has every right to do so. Uh, and I just love that he just lays it on so thick because of all the sex. It's so good. Karen's like, thank you, Graham. I got it. Graham says, yeah, uh-huh. And he chuckles and she chuckles a little bit. She's like, oh, Jesus. He says, oh, here comes a wave. You ready? Thank goodness Mother Nature is like getting them out of this conversation. She's like, no. And so he braces her. He's like, get on your stomach, paddle, paddle quick. He's coaching her. She's like, oh my God, oh my God. And she actually stands up for like half a second before she falls down. And he laughs and she's whooping. And they run back to the shore and they go to find Caroline. And they're both running. And Karen looks back at Graham. Graham runs straight to Caroline. She jumps into his arms. He kisses her. Um, so he's like teasing her. He's like, are you ready to go in? She's like, I'm not going in. Okay, we're gonna go back to Teddy's. But just give a little time. They planted the seeds here. They're gonna marinate. Marinate's not the thing that seeds do. They grow. Meat marinates. You get it. You pick the metaphor, then you continue the one that you like. Okay, we're gonna go back to Teddy's. We've got this little instrumental montage here. I'm not really sure what song this was meant to be. It was no vocals. Because what we really need to see is Billy and Daisy's writing process. Billy is strumming, Daisy's tapping her knee, she's strumming. They found a process, they found a way to merge a process that it's not either of their processes, it's the pair of them figuring this song out. So Daisy's trying, she says, I like that. He says, well, like that, but where's it going to go? I mean, I feel like the good thing about the way I was doing it, Daisy says, but Billy's like, no, but the way I was doing it had some place to go. She says, I just think this suits the verse that you wrote better. Oh, well, that's a good way to get in front of Billy with it. He's like, okay, okay. She says, just try it. We're going to see interview Daisy. She says, we went back and forth on it for hours, changing chords, changing the melody, hashing the whole thing out. We're going to see Billy say, okay, back to the C. He's strumming. They're playing it together. They hit something they both like. You can see that, like the way they both light up when they get something that sounds right to them both, and that they both have the same taste where it does sound right to both of them at the same time. Um, Daisy's laughing. We're going to get a lot more smiling footage here with them. Um, Interview Teddy. Uh, or sorry, interview Billy can barely look at the camera. He's like, it's quite a feeling when it works. He's like lost in thought, thinking back to this day. We go back to Teddy's. We see Billy playing guitar. She's sitting on the floor. We're going to hear some lyrics now that are going to become recognizable. He says, let me down easy. If you're going to, Billy's like, wait, I don't think we should both go down. Daisy's like, okay, let's try it. Then they try it again, they harmonize, and Daisy does what he suggested, and they both like it. So again, like they've found their taste is similar. They are like very compatible in terms of what they like creatively here. It's just finding how they're going to get there. Um, Interview Daisy seems to be getting butterflies just thinking about this. We go back to Teddy's. We're going to see Daisy laughing. We're going to see Billy smiling, and he's playing guitar. They're both singing. Just smiley, happy footage from them. Interview Billy. He smiles. He looks into the distance, and then he like catches the camera looking at him. The camera's been looking at him the whole time, but he's like lost in thought about this. I just really enjoy the way that this captured their creative process. And we've captured Daisy's creative process before in the pacing and the drinking and all of that. And now it's fun to see what two characters doing this would look like. The way that because this is all, I assume that this is all scripted. I don't know how much of this was improvised, but there's definitely an intention to capture this is not a fully finished song. They're coming up with ideas on the fly and they're thinking about things they do and don't like all in the moment. And I feel like I feel like Sam and Riley captured this energy really, really well in how they performed this because they have to do it right, but it has to be a work in progress. And they got there for me. All right, we're going to see this group driving back from surfing. Caroline's driving. Graham and Karen are in the car. Karen's in the back seat so that she can make all kinds of, she can sort of slink back into the distance without being noticed too much. We're going to hear the song How He's Gonna Find Me by the Jades is playing, but clearly what Karen said when they were surfing got in with Graham because he's still thinking about a song that's not currently playing. He says to Caroline, okay, but he didn't write that song. Caroline's like, who cares? Graham says, but Caroline, the whole song is called I Write the Songs. I mean, how can you not have a problem with that? Caroline's like, it's a good song. Whoever wrote it. Graham, tell that to Daisy and see what she would do. Anyway, Graham looks back at Karen. He's like, will you help me, please? Karen's like, who, me? She started this fight. She started a fight that was meant to end all fights. She wanted to completely discredit Caroline in Graham's eyes. She found the one thing that would do it. She said it, and now she is sitting back and letting nature take its course. So he's like, can you help me with this? Karen turns to Caroline. She's like, I mean, what exactly do you like about it? She just wants to like twist the knife in a little bit more. Caroline says, I don't know, the words, his voice. I mean, she can't even articulate it. Once again, she's just losing points with Graham every time she speaks. Graham says, well, no, but for real. He laughs. Karen says to Graham, hey, look, there's no wrong answers here. And what she means by that is every answer Caroline says is wrong from this point forward. Graham's like, well, I wouldn't say there's no wrong answers already. Caroline's still sort of laughing this off. She says, well, it's a catchy song, okay? It makes me happy. Graham is like completely disillusioned by Caroline over I Write the Songs by Barry Manilow. Karen is totally serious in the back, like, what? Hmm? And Caroline's like, geez, isn't that the point of pop music? It's not supposed to like change your whole life, guys. These are people whose lives have literally been changed by music. Um, Karen grimaces. She's like, I mean, that's insane. Graham looks back at Karen. He's like, right, you said there were no wrong answers. Caroline laughs. She's like, oh, F off. She's, still good-natured laughing, but maybe not for long. Graham laughs like, okay, Barry Manilow. He sort of says it under his breath. They pull back up to the house. Graham's like, oh, they're still not back yet? I don't know how many times these guys have seen Rollerball now. He's like, well, he says, how many times can you see Rollerball in one day? The girls laugh. It's a fight between these girls for Graham. I don't know if Caroline knows that she's in this fight. Maybe she does now. Karen's winning no matter what. Karen gets out of the car. She says to Graham, can you walk me in? Totally unreasonable thing to ask for these two. Now, you've been a third wheel on their date the whole thing. And now you're like, see me to the door on your date with her. It's just she's just posturing. She's done with Caroline. Enough of this farce. Can you walk me in? She says to Graham. Graham was like, what? Why? Karen's like, I don't know. What if somebody's in the house? She glances at Caroline. Graham's like who? Karen says, I don't know, burglars. Graham's like, burglars? Caroline doesn't seem to find this as funny. Karen says, yeah, there's been all those break-ins recently. Graham's like, what break-ins? Karen says, will you just walk me to the bloody door? Okay. Is Graham playing dumb or is he not getting it? Because I think he's not getting it. Anyway, Caroline says, it's fine. Just walk her to the door. It's not really fine. This is not fine, Graham. If you walk her to the door, this is done with Caroline. Graham puts his hands up. He's like, all right, okay, okay. He gets out. He's like, I'll be back in a second. In horror movies, you don't say that, and also in Daisy Jones and the Six. Karen's like, okay. We get inside the house, the door opens, uh, and we see Graham come through. He's like, well, it looks like the coast is clear. No burglars here. Karen pushes him up against the fridge and kisses him. And we fade into the song, I Write the Songs from Barry Manilow. What a button. I don't know why Barry Manilow and the team around the Barry Manilow songs approve. I don't know why they approved it. They have a great sense of humor. There is so much ragging on Barry Manilow in this episode by multiple characters. Everybody except Daisy, who has good taste in music that speaks about Barry Manilow, doesn't like this song. And yet it's just like the song that Karen and Graham hook up to for the first time. So good. Thank you, Barry Manilow and friends, for approving use of this song. Um, and the thing is, like, it fades in, and then they start kissing like really aggressively, and they're like bouncing off walls and going into the next room. And the song starts like blaring, and we're hearing, it's from me, it's for you, it's from you, it's from me. It's a worldwide symphony. I don't really know this song myself. Those lyrics are hard to like, how do you memorize those lyrics? Anyway, so Karen smiles at him after the first kiss. He's totally stunned. So I think in the car, he didn't get that this was a fight over Graham. Um, and I write the songs that make the whole world sing. I write the songs of love and special things. And there they are making out. Graham's like, I should probably, he points to Caroline. He gets the word surfboard out. Karen keeps kissing him and she starts trying to pull off his clothes. And then he picks her up and she straddles him and he carries her into the next room. What did Caroline do? I love that they cut it here because we don't need to know what Caroline did, but I like imagining Caroline's in the car. He says, I'll be back. Just gonna check to see if there's burglars. Did he ever get the surfboard back? Did she throw it? Did she crack it over her legs? Like, did she throw it onto the road and run over it and behind it? Did she get out and knock on the door and see what was happening in the house? I don't know. We do hear a horn honk as Graham carries Karen into the next room. But how far did this go? I like the image that Rhodes Scholar, potential psychologist, psychiatrist Karen or Caroline just like loses it and just runs over the surfboard with her car. That's what I want to think happened. But what do you think Caroline would do? Okay, we're gonna go back to Teddy's. Billy and Daisy on the floor. He's sitting, playing guitar. She's laying on her stomach, sort of clicking her heels together. And we've got more lyrics now. I can see it waving in the distance like a mirage on sand. That could be us trading secrets no one else could understand. I mean, this song is one of them. Daisy looks at her and she's like, wait. Why are we saying it? I can see it waving in the distance. What is it? And we are now at a point in their relationship with each other where when Daisy sort of tests, they've worked on this together. So I don't know who wrote that line to begin with, but when Daisy tests it, Billy doesn't get defensive. He says, like our future. She says, well, what can you see in the distance? He's like, it's like, she's like, why not you or us? He says, us works. She says, I like us. He says, yeah, I like us. Let's try it. She says, I love us. Let's try us. So they chuckle. They like got there together and nobody was too precious about the word. Um, and then so we get to so he practices for a second and reminds I can see us waving in the distance. So they try it, they go back, they sing the song again. I can see us waving in the distance like a mirage on sand. That could be us trading secrets no one else could understand. He's like, I love it. They continue. I got you under my skin now. Why do you make it so hard? Daisy's like, that sounds like a song. And Billy continues, like, don't leave me broken and freed. Don't leave me. He's trying to remember it. I like this. I like this touch. I'm assuming it was scripted this way. That Billy's like, wait, don't leave me broken. He's still trying to remember it. She's got the journal. He's working out the guitar. Um, don't leave me broken and free. Won't you tell me where you are? Also interesting that Billy is going to use, like the word broken is going to be used in reference to Daisy shortly. So like this song really feels like them. So they've got this part. Daisy says, okay, this part, we need to rework this here. He's like, why? She says, it's Disneyland, Billy. He says, it's not Disneyland. It's optimistic. It's hopeful. I mean, what's wrong with the song being hopeful? She's like, because it's not we're writing it's not a song about being hopeful. Like we're writing a song about why we do things that are bad for us and why we keep doing them, even though we know it's hopeless. And he didn't realize they were writing that song. He's like, wait. He doesn't like the assessment. He's like, I don't agree. Says, well, you're wrong. So she laughs a little and he's like, oh, wow. But he laughs. That's where they are in their relationship. Look at this moment and look back to the beginning of the episode and ask yourself, how far have these two people come in their ability to communicate with each other and their ability to sort of like tease each other from a place of, but I see you and I respect you. But now they can tease and they can sort of niggle a little bit at each other's ideas and it can get through. But I think that Billy's had a little bit more practice at having the mirror held up to him. Daisy still doesn't really have that gear to her right now, I don't think. And we're about to see it. So he doesn't like this idea that the song that he wrote, he thought maybe there was something hopeful in it, and Daisy doesn't agree. And so Billy says, someone sure did a number on you, didn't they? And he smiles a little bit because he thinks that we're going to continue this little banter thing. And she's like, what does that mean? Her smile fades a bit. And he says, what? I was wrong about you. That's all. Like, I never would have thought you were so. And she's like, what? He says, like, broken. And she holds his gaze and she gets really serious. And this crossed a line. I don't know if it's that it crossed a line, but it was too close. This is the mirror. and she doesn't like how it feels. And she gets up and she leaves the room. He doesn't know where she goes. He processes the fact that she just left because it felt like they had come a really long way in their ability to communicate with each other. And he just said this thing that was a real button. He pushed a button. I don't know if he knows exactly what this button was. I mean, calling somebody broken is a button for sure. But broken is a word in these lyrics. It was right on the tip of his tongue. So I don't know if he knows what exactly. Like he's heard a little bit about her family. This word broken really triggered her. So he's thinking about this and she's gone now. So he sort of just like, so he gets up, he's calling for her. He starts walking through the house. Daisy, Daisy, he's looking for her. We see as she leaves the room, she reaches into the pocket of her shorts and she grabs a pill. She's got more pills. She didn't flush them all. And, when she gets sad, she takes a pill. Okay, so that's what's happening here. Billy, he's looking through the house trying to find out. That's not what I meant. Oh, sorry, Billy, you hurt her feelings. Uh, so he's like calling out, he's like, Daisy, I'm sorry, all right. And then just he's starting to feel like hope is kind of lost here. She's really walked away from him. And he puts his hand on his forehead again. And we saw him do that earlier in the episode when Eddie spoke up and said, like, you know what I think we should do with the songs? Like just at that moment when Billy feels like he's lost it all, like lost all the control. And here, like he was getting into a better place with Daisy, and then he feels like that's fading away. He hears a car door shut. He goes to the garage and Daisy's in there. She's in Teddy's car. She's looking away from the door because if he comes in, that's where he'd be standing. So she's looking away from it. He gets into the car next to her. She looks a little forlorn. He's like, look, I'm sorry. What I meant was we're more alike than I thought. And he's being careful with his words. He's he didn't mean to hurt her, even though they're in a place right now where they are talking about the really deep, important stuff, and hurting each other is a very definite possibility. But he wasn't trying to, and it had that impact. And so he's trying to smooth things over. He's like, we're just more alike than I thought. Daisy's got some tears in her eyes. She says, how's that? Billy says, my dad also left without a forwarding address. I was 8. I try not to think about him too much. She's not looking at him. He's looking straight forward. So they're looking at each other is too much, but he's trying to meet her where she is right now. So he's like, look, see what you saw in this mirror? It's in mine too. He says, I'm pretty sure everything I do is to try to make him regret it. That's a really interesting assessment for him to have. It's a lot of self-awareness. I imagine he has that assessment because of his stint in rehab. I don't know if he could have articulated that before. Daisy sniffles. She kind of looks at him. He looks back at her and she says very weakly, I'm not broken. And the way she says that makes me feel like maybe, but are you not broken? Billy says, yeah, me neither. But there they are. They've just written a song where don't leave me broken, don't leave me broken and free. I mean, what did they write? And what are they not claiming right now? Okay, so she looks up, she sighs, she sniffles. A car approaches. Hey, it's Teddy. Teddy's home. Billy's like, oh. Teddy gets out of the car. He's like, how the hell did you get in my house? Daisy shrugs. At the door. Billy laughs. Daisy smiles. I mean, they've got this cute little memory. Okay, we go back to the Sixes' house. Karen and Graham are making out hot and heavy on the couch. The door opens, Warren and Eddie return, and Karen and Graham quickly fix themselves up so as not to be noticed when Warren and Eddie get into the room that they're in. Warren's like, honeys, I'm home. And Eddie says, we're home. Phone rings. Warren's like, hey, have you guys heard from Billy yet? Phone's still ringing. That might be them. Graham says, no. Eddie answers the phone. He's just takes whatever the message is supposed to be. He says, yeah, be right there. He hangs up. We're going to see, interesting choice. the camera is now outside looking through a window at all these folks around the couch. And Eddie says, that was Teddy. And they all look at him. We're still looking from outside the window. Warren's like, what did he say? Anyway, it's an interesting choice to be voyeuristic like this, looking from through the window at this band when they find out that they need to go back to the studio. I'm not sure I understand why that particular choice is made here. I'd be curious to get people's thoughts on that. There are moments that I think would be interesting to see from a voyeuristic standpoint. I don't know if this is one of them. Like, I don't feel like this is the conversation that could be happening in any room anywhere. But it's a choice, right? I mean, it's another way to show us this house. We've spent some time in this house, so we get to see it from another angle. Okay, so they all look at him. Martin's like, what did he say? And now we're going to go back into the studio. What he said was, get back into the studio. The song is ready. Daisy and Billy are already in the studio. They're sitting there laughing and they're ready to play. Billy's saying, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I literally just, and Daisy's laughing at whatever Billy, I don't know if this was scripted or if this is just something that was being improvised. The band comes in and sees Daisy and Billy on pretty good terms here. And Daisy and Billy greet the band. Billy says, hey, Graham, you know the riff you're always playing. Graham says, yeah, you guys write something to it? Billy says, sit down, I think you're going to dig this. Interview Karen says it was the first song they ever truly wrote together. Interview Warren says, still one of my favorites. We're going back in the studio. They're all sort of jamming, trying to sort out what they're going to do, the different parts. Daisy's like explaining some of the lyrics. It doesn't mean I couldn't believe it. Doesn't mean I won't believe it still. Interview Eddie says, we ran through it a couple times. And then we're going to get into the studio again. The camera is sort of arcing through them all as they're working things out. Every lie is true at the time, baby. That's the thrill. Won't you let me down? We're seeing Eddie's kind of working out what the bass is supposed to be. Karen's making notes to herself for what she's going to do on keyboard. Interview Karen says, I remember having this feeling like nothing would ever be the same again. Interview Graham says, it was just a really great day. Graham's had a good day, huh? Turns out, with a little thought, did have feelings for Graham, and whatever reservations she might have had that made her sort of block the idea from herself, she's willing to put them to the side, at least to hook up with Graham today and to get Caroline out of the picture. So, you know, if you're like ranking how the players are doing this week, Graham's had a good week and a good day. Okay, so back in the studio, Eddie says to Billy, and then it goes to D major. Billy says, yeah, I know, but just trust me, it works, all right? And if you want to just mess around with it, do your thing, man. And Eddie kind of nods. Whenever has Billy said a thing like that to Eddie? Like, do your thing. Like, okay. Eddie almost doesn't even know how to take that. Like, I will. And there it is, you know, like all of a sudden everybody's being empowered to put their stamp, their fingerprint on this song. The intercom's going to beep. Teddy says, should we put this one on tape? Daisy says, yes, we should, because we need to hear what they've been working on. Everybody's agreeing. We've heard a lot of the pieces of this song, but we want to hear the full sound of it. So they established the song is called Let Me Down Easy. Daisy and Billy are going to put on their headphones, and now we're going to see this song play out. The drums start, Graham's playing, Eddie's playing, keyboards come in, Tobias is engineering in the studio. Teddy's watching all of this. Karen and Graham smile at each other. They have a bit of a secret. And they're getting to play a song that everybody seems to be happy with. So many cool camera choices here, a lot of movement. We need to feel, it needs to be something where we feel the energy. There's so much energy coming off of Daisy and Billy working on this song together, everybody having their creative contribution to it. And now it's all this moment of flow, and the camera needs to flow with it. So we're getting a lot of sort of like arcs around the characters, like sweeping motions. It's quite lovely. We sort of swoop in on Daisy and Billy at one point. Daisy starts the lyrics here, found me lost in a daydream, feeling I've been awake too long. My eyes are open while my heart keeps sinking deeper till the days are gone. Let's see, doesn't mean I couldn't believe it. Doesn't mean I won't believe it still. Every lie is true at the time, baby. That's the thrill. And it's an interesting, lyric in terms of the lyrics to this song. What was the landing point? We get the occasional nature image, but it's not kites flying in a firestorm nature images. It's stuff that you think if you parsed it out, you could probably land on the meaning of it. So I think it is sort of a happy medium between Billy and Daisy. They both seem to be happy with it anyway. The camera circles around behind Daisy and Billy. They're both going to start singing together. Oh, won't you let me down, let me down, let me down easy. If you're going to let me down, you're going to repeat that. Don't you go and tell me that you love me while you're leaving. If you're going to leave me now. If you're going to let me down easy. If you're going to let me down. I mean, in concept, I think it's a really relatable chorus. I don't know how good Daisy has been on her own of doing like relatable stuff. Again, kites flying in a firestorm. So they've got that interesting combination of like interesting lyrics, but also things that people might be able to connect with. Teddy's watching all this. He's still smoking. We're going to get some guitar solo from Graham. Billy jumps in. We've heard this part before. I can see us waving in the distance like a mirage on sand. Both of them saying that could be us trading secrets no one else can understand. As the song goes on, we start to see more and more mirroring of each other. They do a lot of this like holding their headphones, but I don't know if all singers do this, if there's something about that technically or that helps you hear what's playing back. But they do a lot of that. Billy's I got you. He sort of has this grit in his voice. I got you under my skin now. Why do you make it so hard? Don't leave me broken and free. Won't you tell me where you are? Again, like this word broken being in there as they start to listen to this song back and they think about the fact that it just came up in their conversation. It must mean a lot to them. It's a very loaded word for them now. Interview Eddie says the best part it was it left room for everyone to contribute. It wasn't just the Billy show anymore. Daisy did that for us. Eddie has been wanting this sort of an outcome for a really long time and was never going to be able to make a dent on his own to get there. And as much as even somebody like Karen was able to speak her opinion, it didn't always have an impact with Billy, but it did sometimes help plant the seed. To get the point across the line later. Okay. If you're going to let me down easy. If you're going to let me down, get more guitar solo. Karen is loving what she's hearing, both from Graham and from the song in general. Back to Billy and Daisy. If you're going to let me down easy. Daisy keeps gesturing to Billy and he's nodding like, they've got a little language between them now of reminding each other what's supposed to happen in the song. Interview Karen saying it was obvious that they made each other better. We see Teddy nodding along. He's got this little smile. And we see Daisy and Billy again. If you're going to let me down, don't you go and tell me that you love me while you're leaving. If you're going to leave me now. At that line, don't you go and tell me. Daisy and Billy both point up. They're like mirroring each other so much, and then they both do like a hand on the headphones. So that we continue this phrase. Interview Karen had said it was obvious they made each other better, and now we get her back, and she says until of course they didn't. So again, like we always need to be left with the reminder that, yeah, just because it feels good right now, don't you forget this is going to come apart at the seams. Don't you forget that, audience. Remember, this is a mess. So they want to keep that tension going for us, even though this was an episode where they kind of overcame a lot of that tension and got to a more productive, sympathetic place with each other. And so when we get to these final lines here, if you're going to let me down, we're going to see the camera. It starts from sort of around the side of Daisy, just sort of a circle around to Eddie. then to Graham, and then we get back to Daisy and Billy. Daisy takes off her headphones as the song is ending. The final notes are still being played. She takes off her headphones and she just has to go over and hug Billy. Like it's all instinct. She just feels so much in this moment. She has to go over, take off her headphones, and go and hug Billy. And the way this hug is shot, it's like I've seen kisses, like first kisses of big characters. I've seen them shot like this before, but a hug, this is like a monumental hug. The camera starts, it sort of half circles around them. It starts on the side of Daisy looking over at Billy. It slow-mo swoops around to Billy's side. It zooms in on their faces, and then we go back to Billy's face, and he's hugging her back, and Graham's watching the whole thing like, oh, this was a big hug. The song ends. We fade, and I also like the choice audio wise. Billy says, "Oh my God," because they were so happy with the song. But it's like his voice starts almost like you're coming out of a daydream, like a blurry state. You were coming out of the slow-mo, or we're getting this distorted voice from Billy at first. And it's just like, it was all a dream. Daisy laughs. She said that was the best one. And she looks back at Teddy. She's like, right, what did you think? And at the controls, Tobias is covering a little smile. He's like, oh my God, I can't believe I was in the room for this. And Teddy nods, the intercom beeps. He says, I'm a mother effing genius. And the band just starts cheering. And it's proof, like this is the combination. This is the combination that works musically. Okay, we need to bookend this episode with one more scene. Camilla is asleep in bed at night. Billy comes home. It's late. They've been working all day, all night. Comes in, doesn't turn on the lights. It's completely dark in the room. Takes off his shirt. He's going to get into bed. He's going to reverse the course of the first scene that we saw. Camilla rolls over. She moans, she yells, she's like, what time is it? He says, late. She says, oh, I'm sorry. Was it that bad? Because he set up the rules for us at the beginning of this episode. If I come back around dinner time, it went well. Read. We recorded my songs that I had written and we got it done. Or the alternative that he had set up earlier was if I come back late, it was all a mess. And so he came back really late. Must have been a mess. She says, I'm sorry. Was it that bad? He looks at her. And he crawls into bed all animalistic and like gets on top of her and starts kissing her. And they get hot and heavy. And we're going to hear the song After 8 by New that takes us into the credits. And this song, not a lot of different lyrics here. We're going to hear, help me through the night, help me through the night, help me, help me, help me, help me through the night. He was tempted by Daisy the entire day. And I think what I was seeing there between this little bit and all of the songs that are about loving somebody and falling in love, I feel like the show is trying to tell us there's a connection between Daisy and Billy and that he is feeling it at the very least. And he's transferring it. It's not really okay for him to feel those things with Daisy, given that he is married to Camilla. So he gets in bed with her and he releases the tension with Camilla. But my goodness, has there been a buildup today? So I think, I don't know, what an interesting episode. This really sets up a new kind of tension for the show to have carrying forward with like more of the triangle. We had the tension of Daisy and Billy not getting along and being good creatively, but now we've got this added tension of like, this is a triangle. So this is, my goodness, really a pivotal episode, because Daisy and Billy were in one place in episode 4, and they're now going to be in a new place in episode 6, and we got there in episode 5. So that's the first half of the episodes, my friends. The music for this one, of course, I always want to mention the opening credits song, Dancing Barefoot by Patti Smith. We're also going to get Love is the Drug by Roxy Music. We got Could It Be Magic by Barry Manilow, the first of 2 Barry Manilow songs in this episode. We got Stumbled on Sublime by who? Daisy Jones. No, by Wyatt Stone. Okay, fine. Star Child by Baby is another song I think we're hearing here. That's what it looks like it's credited as. I Go by the Dixie Cups. In My Room by the Beach Boys. Too Late to Turn Back Now by Cornelius Brothers and Sister Rose. How's He Gonna Find Me by the Jades. I Write the Songs by a very good-natured Barry Manilow. After Eight by New. And the song by Daisy Jones and the Six, we get Let Me Down Easy for the first time. It's kind of fun. So in this one, I'm not like, this one's credited to the Six, and this one's credited to, it's all one now. All right, favorite quote. I'm gonna give you, okay. I'm gonna break from convention a little bit here. I'm gonna do an honorable mention and a favorite quote. Daisy's going to feature in both of these. So Daisy, the honorable mention for Daisy is, we don't have to be friends, but if we're going to write together, we can't be strangers. I mean, I guess that is an explanation of how part of this process needs to work, and it seems to be something that Billy will jive with as we go through. My favorite quote of the episode, I'm going to tag team this. This is a two-part quote, and actually there was a little bit of a smidgen of a nudge of another character in between them, but I pulled that out because I just love this pairing of quotes back to back. Daisy says, "Let me guess, it's about your wife and the rain." And Interview Eddie says, "I think it was called She's the Storm," and he's just laughing his way through it. I just love it. Look, it's not all about balancing favorite quotes across all characters, but I did like that, we got a bit of a team effort to get this favorite quote. Okay, questions for you. Really, there's one question I wanted to ask because I feel like even in a deep dive like this, and I can do a good deep dive, something that I feel like there's probably a lot more meat on the bone with that I didn't, no chance I explored it all. Tell me what you notice about Billy and Daisy's writing process. Tell me what you notice about their writing processes separately. Tell me what you notice about them together. Let's just observe things about this because I feel like there was a lot to see there and I caught some stuff, but I think there was a lot more. And I'm willing to bet that there's stuff that you all picked up on that's really going to pay off in the later episodes. So this is a great time to assess that and to recognize some of the choices that were made here, either in the script or in the choices that the actors made or whatever. But yeah, I'd love to get people's takes on that. Let's really figure out what's happening basically across this whole episode. But process-wise, what does this look like for them? So jump in and let me know your thoughts on that. I am really interested to hear them and have that maybe even influence how I think about the upcoming episodes ahead of us. The whole back half of the show, can you believe it? We're halfway done with the episodes. My goodness. So that is episode 5, everybody. Go out there. Don't be the muse. Be the somebody. Bye, everyone.